All right, up next here on the Ford CES stage, we have Doug Newcomb. He's the president of C3 Group, and he's going to be running a connected mobility panel discussion. And he's going to be up here with Don Butler from Ford and Sal Dhanani from Telenav. So, gentlemen, come on up.
Good afternoon. You know, from location-based services such as local search and emergency services, navigation has always been a core component of the connected car experience. And as the space evolves to incorporate car, ride-sharing, and eventually autonomous driving, nav technology will become even more crucial. In this session, we'll talk about the latest navigation innovations from Ford, as well as what to expect down the road. Welcome, my name's Doug Newcomb. I'm the president of the C3 Group, also a freelance writer, write for a variety of publications, Forbes.com, Wired, Edmunds. I could probably go on, but you get the idea. Today we have Don Butler from Ford and Sal Dhanani from Telenav. I'm going to pass it over to those guys to introduce themselves.
Thanks, Doug. So I lead connected vehicle and services for Ford and really involved in pulling together within Ford all the assets of connectivity, whether it's built in, beamed in, or brought in, and laying out our short, near, mid, and long-term plans in terms of the connected space, and then fitting all of that underneath the smart mobility umbrella, which we talked about earlier today in Mark's keynote.
Right, we were going to talk a bit about that as well. If you missed Mark Phil's keynote, I'd highly suggest checking it out. Sal?
Hi, my name is Sal Dhanani. I'm a co-founder of Telenav and president of our automotive business. And my #1 job is to take care of Don and his team. That's what it's all about. You know, at Telenav, we have very simple priorities. #1 is our end user. #2 is our OEM customers. And then our team. So when I say Don is right up there, that's very much the case.
Well, you guys have the really cool jobs. I mean, I know I get to test cars, but you know, creating this stuff is always fascinating to me. And you know, because I've been testing cars for a long time, I've also seen navigation, the evolution of navigation. Before we came up, I was saying how I still have a CD-based navigation system in one of my old cars. Old by old, I mean '96. I just never took it out. But we've seen this evolution. We're going to talk a bit about that. But you know, navigation was probably the first connected car technology. And it still is a very important part of the space. So I want to talk a bit about that evolution of navigation in the car and how it's changed.
I think from the standpoint of the driving experience and going from point A to point B, when we think about navigation, and particularly in the early days of embedded navigation, it was more about, and people thought about, I need to get to a place that I don't know, so I need a navigation system to help me get to that route. Increasingly today, what we see is we know the place we'd like to go, but we want to know the most efficient way to get to that place. Or we'd like to understand, is there an opportunity to refuel as I'm on my way to that place? And so navigation has transitioned from just a point A to point B to enabling an experience when we're moving on the road.
Right, and you know, I remember when I first got my first navigation system, God, it was quite a while back. I remember people said, well, you know, why do you need a navigation system? I know where I'm going, you know, and what I found, one of the early benefits was like, sure, I know where I'm going, but like one of the early things I would do is like, we've all been in a situation where you're with your wife or whomever and say, where do you want to eat? Oh, I don't know, where do you want to eat? Call it up on a navigation system, everything's right there. So, I mean, that's one example of how you can get information.
Yeah, it's really become much more than point A to B. It helps you decide where to go. It helps you decide how to get there. And in many cases, it's telling you what to do when you arrive. So it'll help you, a nav system will help you find a parking spot. And then remember where you parked and then bring you back. So it's evolved a lot beyond, you know, just sort of that point A to B to a lot more.
And one of the things that we've benefited from in terms of the Telenav relationship and experience is because they started as a mobile application, there's modes of usage that we have not been exposed to inside the vehicle, but people have been accustomed to using it with their smartphones, for instance. And so if we're able to take some of that learning and take some of that information, then we can turn the navigation system inside the vehicle into basically an information access device that's more easily utilized and doing things that make sense, again, from that customer experience standpoint.
Good point. Now, what are some of the connected car features that are enabled by navigation that most people, don't think about? I mentioned the one, the restaurant finder, but I think a lot of people, as you mentioned, it's like, okay, point A to point B, but what are some of the things that, the average consumer out there may not go, wow, I didn't know I could do that?
Yeah, so there are some of these basic use cases that you talked about. When you think connected nav, you think traffic beamed into the car that can be used. You think of accessing the cloud for search and ratings and restaurant reviews and so on. But the thing that's most interesting, and it's not per se a feature, is that once you connect the embedded navigation system to the cloud, and you have all the power of the cloud and the big data of the cloud, it becomes a completely different experience. It's kind of like Apple had email, they had copy-paste, but it was a much better experience than another device. So it's the same feature set, but it becomes much, much better, enabled through a great experience, which in connected car and connected navigation is powered by the cloud and by big data. And so personalization, sort of you get into the car, and it knows where you're going because it knows your patterns, it knows your history, it has access to your calendar, kind of pulling all of that together. And then I get into the car and I see, okay, this is my next destination. That's powerful.
Yeah, and Don brought up a good point. People are now used to having us access on their phone, so it's, they're may not even expect it in the car, but now Telenav and Ford are bringing some of those features.
Yeah, and it's been interesting because we can't anticipate that. Just like portable navigation devices have kind of stabilized and are dropping off because of smartphones, and there's the expectation that maybe that'll happen in the vehicle as well. And actually what we've seen is the penetration of embedded navigation systems has not only held steady, it's continued to increase, at least in Ford vehicles. And I think part of that is because people are using it as not just, again, point A to point B, but as a content and information providing device. And with Sync 3, we're excited, for instance, that we're able to do one box destination entry, and you're able to just begin to type in, say, Starbucks or Target, and it will prompt you with the closest locations of those as you begin to type it in. So it's a very similar experience to what you would have on a mobile device, for instance. And as we were alluding to before, as we go forward, we want to begin to connect that experience in the vehicle with the experience on the headset, and then leverage the capability that we get from the cloud as well to provide a contextually aware experience so that we can anticipate and we can more easily enable customers to accomplish what they want to accomplish without burdening them.
Now, speaking of that, beyond helping people get from point A to point B, how can navigation make driving easier? And also make drivers' daily lives better? I know that I was recently in a vehicle and it noted that I was low on fuel, and I was like, oh, okay, and I hit it, and it showed me where all the local, not only where the local gas stations were in the area, but the price. So
I think that's a great example. Again, it's providing contextual awareness that helps you and prompts you with things that you might not have otherwise expected. So whether it's a fuel price or whether it's, this is my route, and I see that my anticipated arrival is 23 minutes, and so that's going to work for me. It's enabling people to accomplish what they want to accomplish because we're all busy, we're all time stretched, time starved, and so anything that we can do to make that experience in the vehicle more efficient and more practical, and again, bringing information to bear to help that experience, we definitely want to take advantage of that. And again, the partnership with Telenav has worked really well for us. We're continuing to learn, and as we were talking before, we push them and they push us, and together we're creating a great experience.
Exactly. And that point about daily use is key. In fact, Telenav's mission statement, which we coined in 1999 when we started, was to help make people's lives easier when they're in their cars and on their road, and help them every day. So that everyday concept is key to how we think. And we use a lot of concepts at the company to come up with, okay, how do we help people? So one of the concepts that we have is sort of knowing the road ahead. So when a driver gets in the car, how can we tell them about what's ahead of them proactively and make their drive safer and better and more productive? So For example, if there are cars that are half a mile ahead of you and they all start braking, well, we can notify you through the cloud that, hey, there's something happening on the road, and proactively help you. Or if you're heading somewhere and we guess, okay, you're going to this appointment or this meeting, we'll tell you, hey, the route you're taking, which you normally would be fine, but it has traffic. Take another route. So it becomes this passive thing that's running in the background all the time, navigation, and helping you with every journey, every trip, all the time. That's how we think about it as well.
Yeah, and Don made a good point of, I think everybody has gotten so much benefit from technology, but one thing we don't seem to get from technology is more time. It's like it seems like we have less time these days. But as you mentioned, if navigation can save you that time, make your life easier. Speaking of time, navigation systems are only as good as the mapping software. And we've gone from CDs, like I mentioned, to DVDs, to hard drives, and now we have navigation on SD cards and some cloud connectivity as well. And the next step seems to be over-the-air updates. When do you think we'll reach that point?
So with Sync 3, we've actually made the transition from SD cards to having the map information embedded within the system. And while it won't be available when Sync 3 initially launches, we've got a roadmap in terms of feature upgrades, and we already have the ability to update Sync via Wi-Fi and some of the sync capability. When you run into mapping files, obviously those are large data files, and so we need to look at things like differential updates and get that perfected and make sure that we can get that nailed down. But it's definitely on our roadmap in terms of a future upgrade for Sync 3. So within this generation of product, you can expect to see and be able to have that map be downloaded over the air.
And this is a great example of that push and pull, where Ford's been wanting this for a long time. Hey, we are going to have the software that's updatable through OTA. Well, let's make sure maps are without you having to download 10 gigs of data. And so we've put a lot of effort into this as well. And now we have technology that will launch in mobile first by mid-year, where you can actually edit one road and take it off or change the speed limit or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's great.
That's all that goes down. It's not that big file that we normally would think about. And so it makes it real.
Right.
And makes it possible.
Right, because that's one of the things I found in driving around with navigation systems, and now that we're getting cloud-connected maps, is, road may not be there, or, it's like, so having that information really helps out a lot. And one thing I was going to point out about Sync 3 that I was impressed with from a navigation standpoint, beyond the fact that it can be updated over the air, was, as you mentioned, the kind of Google-like bar where you enter something, you don't have to sit there and hit, I don't know, Pete's Texas Barbecue and
yeah, you don't have to say
hall.
City, then street, then address, and we've all kind of labored through that, right? And so both from the standpoint of one box destination entry within the graphical touch system itself, as well as from a voice standpoint, we now have a much more relaxed conversational style with our voice. And so instead of having to say 1125 Main Street, you can say 1125 Main Street, and the system will detect it. Anything to make that experience easier and more accessible, and just that process of getting to where you want to go and everything else that's related to it more pleasing and just a better experience overall.
Yeah, that's my test when I'm testing navigation systems. If it can do a one-shot destination entry, hit the button, say it all the way through, and bam, you're good to go.
And where we've really benefited, and maybe you can talk more about it, but that one-box destination entry, as you begin to type letters, we prompt you with possibilities, but much of that is from your experience in mobile and what people have searched for.
Exactly. For us, the challenge was, in the cloud, that's much easier because you have gigs of RAM and processors. And now how do you shrink that down and put it in the embedded system? And then that guy right there, actually, he's looking down at his phone, but he made it happen. Shane, he's the one who really made it happen.
Thank you,
He
Shane.
shrunk the cloud down into the head unit. But it was a big challenge, and a lot of the learnings were from mobile. So, a lot of those learnings are sort of packaged up inside that embedded system. And every time we update, that knowledge gets updated as well, even if you're not connected.
Now, one of the things I'm wondering is, what kind of service and features do you envision navigation offering in the future? I mean, everybody comes to CES, they see everything, and that's what people ask me. Say, hey, what did you see there? What's coming? So I wanted, what can Ford customers expect to see in vehicles soon?
So not putting a specific time frame on this, but one of the things that we're looking at and was alluded to in Mark's keynote around smart mobility is sort of truly multimodal transportation. And so I start in my vehicle, potentially I would move to public transportation and then move to walking, and then I'm inside the office building. And so being able to stay with that customer, whether you're in the vehicle, in public transportation, or walking on the street or in a building, and navigate them all the way to that particular door. That's kind of the things that we're working on and the things that we're working with Telenav on bringing to bear. It'll come piece by piece. We'll be connected between the mobile and the vehicle first, but then we'll eventually sort of leveraging the cloud, kind of understand where consumers are, and again, with permission based on them giving us informed consent of being able to monitor that, we'll be able to deliver this experience that takes them literally from one door to the next door.
Yeah, for us, it's that's the thinking is, a lot of the features are there. If you've ever looked at a spec for a nav product, it's 1,000 lines of features, and most of them are never used. So the trick is, how do you repackage that into a user experience that becomes really easy for the user, that surfaces at the right time? So that example of walking away from your car, well, many times you'll see in demos, mark parking spot. Well, why do I have to do that? I walked off the car, the Bluetooth disconnected, mark it. So it's reimagining a lot of the feature set that's there and bringing it to the front. That's sort of our focus, is reimagining the experience.
Yeah, I can't wait for that, because I was doing some shopping with my family over the holidays in some massive mall, and it's like, okay, I need a navigation app. I was in Silicon Valley a couple of years ago, and I guess the buzz was indoor navigation. I thought, okay, yeah, that makes sense. You're in. How many times have we been in a building and can't find your way around, and having that ability to get where you're going, get out of your car, and continue that last mile. Well, that's all the questions I have, guys. I don't know if there's anything you want to mention as far as closing remarks.
No, I mean, the only thing that I would say is, with the debut of Sync 3 and the navigation capabilities that have been enabled by Telenav, we're excited about bringing that to folks yet this year. And we've talked about some of the things that are on the horizon near term, and just excited about what we're able to deliver in terms of, again, a great customer experience working with partners like Telenav.
So what are we going to see? Give us some good stuff.
Likewise, great experience working with you. And what I'm most excited about in navigation is that embedded navigation is finally going to get connected here soon. And then the power of the cloud, the fresh maps, the search engine that's so much more powerful in the cloud, all of those kind of things that when you look at a JD Powers report, that users complain about, we'll be able to solve it. Once we plug this together.
Thank goodness.
It always gets back to JD Power. That's right. Yeah.
Well, it's important. I know people get hammered on that and get hammered on, but and that's what's exciting to me about this space is make my life easier. I mean, just and it's getting there. I'm a glass half full kind of person, and I mean, this amazing technology that we're seeing in vehicles, and I really believe we're only at the start. So thanks, Don. Thanks, Sal, for joining us. Stick around. We're going to do another discussion on the brave new world of connected mobility. And again, if you get a chance to see, I'm sure it's available online, Mark Field's keynote, you get an idea of where we're headed. But we're going to talk about that a bit. Stay tuned. We're going to have more giveaways, and we'll be right back. Thank you very much.
Thanks.